begin our meeting now. And Michael, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Hold on. Roll call first, John.
Charles Long,
Here.
Chris Martinson,
Here.
Michael Shaw,
Here.
Priscilla Manuelito, Kevin Mitchell.
Thank you, John. We do have a quorum to conduct business. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the state of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Michael. The next order of business is the approval of the agenda for this evening's meeting. Board members?
Mr. Long, I would like to, under 4A, number 1, the new pickup trucks, I would like that to be voted on separately, pulled from the consent agenda items and voted due to me. There might be a conflict of interest with Rico Motors. I would like that voted on separately.
Okay, motion's been made by Michael Shaw
I'll second.
and second.
So that the second, just to be clear, that motion is just to remove item 4A, 1 and 2, and just push those down into new business.
Right.
So they can be voted on separately.
Just for item A, 1.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize. 4A1 is what we're
Yes,
talking about.
yes.
Okay,
Okay.
I second that motion.
Okay. The other item, agenda item that needs to be deleted is Jonathan Naz, the Honorable Navajo Nation President. He's got other commitments, so he won't be here. So that will also be taken out from the agenda. Motion in parties, is that okay?
Okay, with those changes, I would like to make a motion that we approve the agenda with those changes.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, John?
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. We've approved our agenda for this evening's meeting. Let's go down to item number 3, approval of the board meeting minutes. Let's take care of August the 22nd or the 26th first.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 26, 2019.
Okay, motion's been made by Michael Shaw to approve the August 26th meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Chris Mortensen. Roll call, John?
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. Let's go down to the next meeting minutes. September 16th meeting minutes, board members.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of September 16, 2019.
Okay,
Second.
motion was made by Michael Shaw to approve the meeting minutes of September 16, 2019. Second by Chris Mortensen. Roll call, Joan?
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes, okay. Thank you, board members. We approved our 2 meeting minutes. Let's go down to item 4, approval of consent agenda items.
Make a motion to approve item 4 with the changes that we made earlier.
Okay. Motion's been made by Chris Mortensen to approve the consent agenda items, second by Michael Shaw. Roll call, Joan?
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. we do have, let's go down to study circle, public comment, and let me remind those that are going to be making comments, the time limit is 3 minutes. First one up is Mr. Foster. Larry?
Good evening, Superintendent, Chairperson, Vice, members, the families, students, faculty, administrators. My name is Larry Foster. I have grandkids. My wife and I have grandkids. One at Gallup High School in 9th grade. The other one is 6th grade and 8th grade at Chief Manito, and one student at grandson at Turpin. But looking at your agenda here, it says that October the 14th there's no school. So due to the Indigenous Day, it's going to be honored. So I want to say that the Indigenous Day is very important for the Native people, as far as the proclamation and resolution was passed not only by the International Indian Treaty people back in September 1977, stated that there's a resolution that's presented to United Nations, and that the declaration is going to say that there's going to be an International Day of Solidarity with the Indigenous people of America, and that turned into Indigenous People Day. So the city of Gallup, we have worked with the mayor's office, John McKinney, the city of Gallup, and the proclamation has been provided in conjunction with the resolution 2016-40, which says the city of Gallup knows the Indian nations have lived on this land immortal. There's progress that was accomplished through the American Indian thought, the technologies that the Indian people brought, the culture that the Indian people brought. So, so they're going to propose, the city of Gallup has proposed that the proclamation was going to be issued in a resolution that's going to be subject on the second Monday of October of every year. So Gallup has a strong history, not only throughout the years in supporting the American Indian community in institutions, schools, the well-being growth of Gallup, the American Indian community of Gallup, and the indigenous community. So whereas it encourages the business, the organizations, the public entities to recognize the people, Indigenous Peoples Day. So through the celebration of this, the values of culture, not only in the schools and the hospitals, but in the community. So therefore, this was written on September the 26th, 2017. So I wanted to bring this here and make it a record. Thank you.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Foster. Monica? Remember, 3 minutes, Ashada.
Good evening, board members, Mr. Superintendent, staff, administrators. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I think my biggest concern is parental involvement. Haven't seen any meetings for, I believe the JOM's been replaced with IPAC, I think it's called. I have a lot of concerns from our schools. In the past, we would work directly with Mr. Hyatt here. my school is lacking a culture teacher, and my son's a senior at the school. I believe that is a requirement, Mr. Charles Long. You know that's a requirement for our students. I received a really nice pamphlet in the mail about the future of Gallup McKinley County Schools, but I don't see a lot of implementation being done regarding my school. I want to know how my child's going to graduate with no culture teacher, how my child's going to graduate with just nothing but substitutes in some of these courses. I'm concerned about my school, students there, accountability. I would like to attend whenever this IPAC meeting is so I can share my concerns. I feel like we're just kind of left out in the left field here. I don't know who to address my concerns to, because half the time our concerns are just idling. Some of our schools are having many problems, and I even have teachers to this day still emailing me, Monica, we're going to have a trip for career readiness. I don't know if it's going to get approved. And I told them, just go forward with it. I'm no longer, there's no more JOM. They're going about it a different way. There's so many concerns I want to address here, but I'm limited. I want to know how the district's going to bring back parental involvement. You have this case of Martinez and Yazzie, cultural related plus special ed. Again, my child's got an IEP. I have problems with that as well. Services not being provided. Who am I to address this to? I am trying to prevent a complaint to go to the state PED. That if I don't get any answers or if no one's communicating with me, I will guarantee you I will submit all my complaints directly to PED.
Okay.
Thank you.
Time's up. Just for those in the audience, for your information, as far as Johnson O'Malley is concerned, it's not a dead program. We've been arranging meetings with the Navajo Nation, but something always comes up, so that's not finalized yet. Georgiana, 3 minutes, Ashunda.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Hyatt, Mr. Long, Mr. Vice President, and Mr. Shaw. Joan and members of the audience, good evening. I have come to you with a concern that really upsets me about bullying. Your employees, as far as bullying children and parents. According to the New Mexico PED, this anti-bullying is not just for students, it's also for parents and for staff. And with it, I'm just going to read just the guideline documentation of it. Safety in New Mexico schools is one of the most important issues facing our communities. It didn't say one, it said most of the important issues. Safety is critical for fostering an environment that is conducive to learning and growing, for building healthier relationships, providing an education environment for all students, employees, volunteers, and family, free from harassment, Mr. President. Intimidation or bullying supports a total learning experience that promotes personal growth, healthy interpersonal relationships, wellness, freedom from discrimination and abuse. Therefore, harassment, intimidation, and bullying are forms of dangerous and disrespectful behavior that cannot be tolerated in New Mexico schools. Mr. President and members of the board, I'm going to bring a concern to you because I feel that central office has failed me on hearing these complaints. Mr. Morrison, I have shared briefly with you in the early days of September, and I have yet to hear a phone call from you, sir. Mr. Shaw, I could not get a hold of you, sir. And being a board member, it is very important for your constituents to get a hold of you. Being a school board member, you stand for the students of Gallup McKinley County Schools. And with that comes specific obligations to keep our students safe from harassment, intimidation, and bullying of all forms. Therefore, I have a packet, Mr. President, that I would like you to look at. I need to wait for one form from the police department. And I hope that you take into deep consideration the documentations that I give to you, sir. When you're a board member or when you stand in central office, you stand for the students of Gallup McKinley County Schools. And I believe that no student should be bullied, no student should feel intimidation, no student should be harassed at any level by any student or even a Gallup McKinley County and school employee. It says that on this from the New Mexico Department of Education, that it's a form that is dangerously and disrespectful, Mr. President. And I agree. Maybe some of the numbers that fail within Gallup McKinley County Schools is because our children do not feel safe. And if a child does not feel safe, Mr. President, they cannot learn. Their minds are somewhere else and they cannot focus on the word. They cannot focus at school. You being a board member and some of them who are not here, and I wish they were, that I have expressed my concern. And I have gotten the response of, it's not my district. And I hope that they're listening online because it doesn't matter whether it's your district or not. You are a school board member of Gallup McKinley County Schools. Therefore, you are entitled to every district.
Can you close out your comments?
Yes, sir. So therefore, I will respectfully hand you my documentation and hope that it doesn't fall on deaf ears. Thank you, Mr. President.
Rishi, those that made public comments, was talking about concerns. You know, I can't respond to concerns. The administration of the school, well, they have taken notes, they will address it, okay? So, thank you. Since there are no other public comment, let's go to reports. No reports by the superintendent, board members?
I have nothing to report, Mr. President.
Okay. No reports from the board. We have the notices and communication. Those you can read on your own. We do have 2 action items. Yeah, we have 2 action items. The first one is the redemption of bonds.
President Long, members of the board, have Giovanna get up and talk a little bit about the process we've been going through with DFA.
Mr. Long, members of the board, superintendent, and members of the audience, you had previously approved an approach to redeeming our outstanding revenue bonds. We, since that time, were able to negotiate to allow our bonds to be callable earlier. So our callable date was 2022. We've actually negotiated that back. They're going to actually let us redeem them this month if allowed by the board, and that'll save us a little bit more money is the long story short. It's going to save us. They did not charge us any fees They waived all associated fees and interest.
How'd you talk him into that?
Mr. Mortensen, we typically work with the New Mexico Finance Authority. They work in the best interest of the school districts that they work with. It's a long-standing relationship that we've had with that organization. So they know and understand the financial struggles that we've been through, especially bearing the full burden of the teacher's revenue bonds, as they were not supported by the state in any way through a state match. The district has been paying 100% of those bonds. So with the funding that we receive from the legislature, in addition to funding set aside for this, we should be able to actually pay back and have some funding left, which I shall bring to you in a future meeting to move back into our general fund.
Great news.
Yep, great news, Giovanna.
Mr. President, I'd like to suggest a motion that we approve the optionally, that we vote to approve the optionally redeem the Series 2012 bonds as stated in item, what is it, 6A? 6A.
Okay, motion has been made by Chris Mortensen to approve action item A, second by Michael Shaw. And before we vote, I just want to say, I think the monies that were raised through these bonds, those funding was used very wisely to address the needs that those bonds were floated for. So thank you. School district staff. Roll call, John?
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Thank you, Board.
The item that we pull from consent agenda items is the bids, the advertisements that was made to purchase new pickup trucks 4x4. And we pulled them because there is a conflict of interest on one of the board members. Giovanna, can you explain?
Mr. Long, members of the board, superintendent, members of the audience, I'm not aware of the conflict of interest as it exists. If I may be given some additional information. So the district does on a regular basis send out the conflict of interest reporting form. Of course, all of our employees are required to report any conflicts of interest under the Governmental Conduct Act. So if there is a conflict of interest that could be made known to me, we may need to pull this item.
Yeah, I think Mr. Shop at one time was working for Rico Mortars.
I've
Is
done
that-
some work
Or some work, yeah.
recently.
Recent. It's okay.
Okay.
So that created a conflict of interest on this issue.
What I would say in the best interest of transparency is that we pull this item and put it on, and then Mr. Schaff recuse himself from any vote associated with this organization.
Yeah, so that's basically what happened.
Mr. President, can we vote on that this evening with Mr. Schaff abstaining?
Yeah, as long as Mr. Schaff abstains from weighing in on the vote, I would feel that our conflict of interest, although your conflict of interest is not formally defined under New Mexico state statute, I understand any appearance of impropriety is to be avoided. So I agree as long as you recuse yourself from voting on this item.
Yeah, so that's why we pulled it from consent agenda items and put it under action items.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for making that aware.
Okay. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item 4A1, the new pickup trucks 4x4 of September 26, 2019.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Roll call, Joan?
Mr. Shaw?
Abstain.
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Giovanna. Thank you, Pauletta, Tim, Gerald, and all that. Okay. And thank you, Ben, for for being here. Yeah, this, I guess, pretty much concludes our business for this evening, board members.
Mr. Go ahead, Mr. Schaaf, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No,
Mr. Long, excuse me, I'd probably, I would suggest we make a motion to adjourn the meeting and we take this discussion offline. Since
Okay.
it wasn't, it has nothing to do with that. We have rules about when you come in and submit for public comment, and you were past the time, and so just in keeping with the rules of it, there's nothing to hide.
no. Yeah.
Mr. Long, I'd like to motion that we
I think,
adjourn, please, Mr.
You
Long.
know, there's no discussion on adjournment. Motion has been made. It's been second. And we're just going to do a roll call, and maybe at the next, or
Sit tight,
you
we
can
can talk
talk to
about that
us
later.
after this meeting is adjourned. Okay, come up,
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
get a roll call.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes, we are adjourned.
6:26.
You can come up.